Hey everyone, I'm going to introduce the sketchbook exercises that we're going to be doing for the course of this class. This is a way to get the pencil moving on the paper and do some warm-up. So the way we're going to do this is through a 5-2-1-30 warm-up sketch. And what I mean by that is we're going to you're going to use a reference image of an insect, label it as such. Everything that you use a direct reference image for, you need to cite the original author and in this case, the BugGuide identification number. This is, again, warm-up sketching. None of this needs to be precious. Don't bother erasing anything. This is all sketching. All right, so we've got 5 minutes here. That gives us about enough time to sort of outline things. I'm going to make him go upright so I can fit a few more in here. Now, insects are bilaterally symmetrical, and this is a dorsal view, so that gives us a little bit of freedom there. So I'm getting like general line down the middle, just so that I can keep my bilateral symmetry lines intact. But if your insect is viewed from the side or from an oblique angle, that's not as important. This just helps sort of for construction lines. So I'm blocking out the main, so the length of the body, over half of the length of the body is the abdomen, or sorry, over half the length of the body is the elytra of the beetle. So the wing covers. Then we have another slightly larger segment, that's the pronotum, and then the head. And we'll bring it up here. He's got very long mandibles. The mandibles, if I kind of do a little bit of finger measurement, is about as long as the abdomen itself. And they, come on, arc around here. We got about 3.5 minutes left. Let's start putting in their little antennae. And the legs are going to come in this view of this insect. These elytra are part of the thorax, and the abdomen is really just a smaller section back here underneath. So we're seeing part 1, 2, and 3 underneath, so that would be where the thorax is, on the underside of the insect. And the legs come out from each of those segments. Legs are lovely little zigzags. So these legs are connecting to the middle segment, first segment, middle segment, and then the last segment. But what you see from above is this sort of angle. If we look through the insect, we're seeing that connection point up here, but when you're looking just from the top, it looks like the legs, you can just see their emergence point right here. So that's something to keep in mind. When drawing in the insect legs, the tibiae are usually sort of triangular shaped. You can kind of do a shorthand tibiae, kind of like hieroglyphizes the insect. And they have tiny little tarsal claws. We've got 2 minutes left. And what's peculiar and wonderful about Lucanus is their cute little antennae, look like little combs on the end. And let's spend our last couple minutes here looking at the shape of these mandibles. These are really fun. So stag beetles are called that because their mandibles, or their jaws, often have really big branching sections, and that's going to be pretty neat. So these guys have a little fork at the end. Why, it's the stag. The elk stag beetle. Their little eyeballs are right here, right on the edges. Just behind, the antennae actually come out in front of the eyes, not necessarily from the top of the head, it's always in front of the eyes. There's also serrations here. Still have a little bit of time, and we can start adding some detail. Just going to shade this in a little bit, cover up my anatomy there that I was using to demonstrate. There are 2 elytra. This is a little sculptured, it's kind of indents here. right, 20 more seconds. Let's get those antennae a little bit nicer. 5 minutes is a surprising amount of time, especially when you're just blocking out and kind of using these shapes to build up these insects. Working from larger, more generalized to more specific shapes. Cool. All right, so whenever you finish one of these warm-up drawings, label it. This is the 5 minute, and we'll reset, recalibrate, and do the same thing, just the same thing, same pose, in 2 minutes instead. So let's set our 2-minute timer. I'm going to actually keep this off the screen because it keeps falling asleep. That's kind of annoying. So. All right, 2 minutes. We can use both the image we're looking at and the lessons that we learned in this. So block out head, pronotum, which is the first part of the thoracic segments. And it's a little skinnier than the shoulders of the elytra, or the wing covers of the beetle. And kind of just carry our measurements over a little bit just to get these beautiful large mandibles. Get those points in there. Some serration. I'm not going to worry as much necessarily about shading, but... And I'm not positioning the legs exactly as they are in the photograph. I'm just sort of stylizing it a bit more into a generic pose, but I'm still going to reference the original photographer because that's what I was using. About 40 seconds. So really simplifying some of these shapes into just sort of the idea. We still have a little time, so we can add a bit of shading with some shine on one side, just for fun. Oh, antenna. Don't forget the antennae. But yeah, it's just getting the pencil moving. You really just want to have that excuse to put something on paper and have it be not a big, you know, this is my next magnum opus sort of thing. It's just a sketch. It's just a warm-up. There's not really a lot of pressure. It's just a way to kind of loosen up. So that's our 2-minute warm-up. 1 minute. We're gonna go a little bit faster. And it's also about letting go. You want to let it go of the preciousness. None of this is, you know, the most important drawing that you have made to date sort of thing. Your best work is always ahead of you, and this is one way to get there. So 1 minute, really distilling down now. Big head. Elytra. Let's get those main identifying characteristics. What are the fewest lines we need to communicate stag beetle? Like I said, the legs just become zigzags, which is kind of fun. Antennae. There we go. A little bit superfluous. Cool. Stag beetle. But you are just, again, using the very simplest lines, not really bothering with shading necessarily, but taking this form and distilling it down into something that just says the essentials of what you need to understand what this insect is. Always label it. 1 minute. 30 seconds. This is the lightning round. That can get exciting. Okay, boom. And because you've drawn it before, some of these initial setup parts are, sort of muscle memory. You've already done it, you kind of know what it looks like, so it's a little easier to get that going. Some things get exaggerated a little bit maybe, because we just want to get them down. Antennae. And there we go. So you're just going for the last, stop it. Just what exactly do you need? Quick, stylized sketch, 30 seconds. First, get the main lines in. And it's not, you don't have to be precious about any part of this. You get a little shading in there if you want to get fancy. It's always a little scutellum. Very cute. Kind of a little fastener for the elytra. And you're not necessarily adding more information per se, you're just refining some of the lines and choosing what you want to keep. This will be important when you're doing some of your pen and ink work if you want to make the first version in pencil and then draw over it with pen. That's kind of like what you're doing. A little hatch shading. And it's still just a sketch warm-up, so it's important to kind of give yourself that space, to just be sketchy. You don't have to erase lines and make things perfect. That can be for your future work. This is just a warm-up. Let's get our little spurs on there. Two minutes even is quite a long time, provided I started the timer. Oh yes, it did. Cool. I'm just gonna finish these real quick. Some cheating. 2 minutes and 15 seconds. There. Spurs, spurs, spurs. Cool. So yeah, so that's one option. That's the 2-minute reprisal or refinement stage. All right, so I'm just going to use a different piece of paper for the reprisal. And what you're doing is using a different perspective to know a little bit more about the three-dimensional characters of this insect. So that pronotum is actually pretty long. Two kind of little side swipies. And the mandibles arch, which isn't often apparent when you're looking at a dorsal view. We're seeing this big arching view. Cool. This is a great way to see where those legs actually come off too. So these wing coverings, or the elytra, are coming off the middle segment, as is the middle leg. Body's a little bit bigger. I'm not going to put a lot of detail into the far legs because we don't want it to get too confusing with the the nearby ones. So just a little hint indicator over there. This is a long 2 minutes. So if you have overlapping features, you want to bring the nearer ones into more prominence because they're closer to you. You give them a little bit heavier line, a little bit more weight there. There we go. All right, so 5, 2, 1, 30 for your warm-up sketching. That can fill a page in your sketchbook or use a separate piece of paper. Oh, no, I want this all in the sketchbook so we can see the progression through time. Then you come back for 2 minutes either to refine or to get another view. Also, what you should include is the photograph that you are looking at for both versions. So on the bottom here, what is the order? It's Coleoptera. And we can find that on the top of BugGuide. I'll show you during our first meeting. Coleoptera. Family, Lucanidae. The species is Lucanus elaphus. And since handwriting doesn't always necessarily show italics the way it should, if you're handwriting a species name, you underline it to show that it's, italics. And then, equally important as this identification information, Amy Goodman, BugGuide number, what are you, 1684065. And if you choose a different image here, do the same thing. And this one is 4056. That's a little confusing. Oh, and also the date. What is it today? 24th May 2021. And your name. Cool. So yeah, the best way to hone skills and build them is through a daily practice. It's kind of like learning a language or practicing, rock climbing or or learning a musical instrument. All of these skills are built through time, through multiple small practice sessions over time. And that's what we're doing over the course here. If you do miss a day, that's totally fine. Just make it up on the next day, but be careful not to let them build up because that can be really overwhelming. If you have suddenly six 15-minute drawings to do, all of a sudden you've got an hour and a half committed. So, thanks very much. See you in the next one.